So a bunch of people have asked me why I only shoot generally at 28 millimeters and 50 millimeters. Oops, I'm looking at the ND filter and I see a smudge. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm curious to see if I could see that when I get into editing. But a lot of people have asked me why I use 28 and 50. There's really, I don't think that you need any other focal length to shoot a narrative film. Like, I think they're that flexible where you could pretty much get everything you want. I mean, unless you got some kind of extreme shot that you need, like of a bird flying in the air, where you need like a really long lens or something like that. Or if you need, like, you know, if you're indoors and you need an extremely wide perspective and maybe you need an ultra wide lens. But generally, you know, 28 and 50 is going to cover you pretty much for everything. And what I love about 50, I mean, I usually shoot at 28, I would say 90% of the time. But, well, I won't say 90, maybe 65 to 70% of the time, I'll be on my 28 millimeter. This is all manual lenses. But what I like about 50 is I like how it makes the background look closer. You know, it gives, I mean, I'm going to say compression. And I know some people say there's no such thing as lens compression, but it looks like compression because it brings the background closer. It seems like it's closer to me than what a 28 millimeter would be. And I also like the way it looks when you open up that aperture, like, and really blur out the background. Whoa, gigantic ants around here, crazy. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is open up the aperture real quick and show it to you. So stick with me for a second. I'm going to go, that was f8. So I'm going to go to f2. And let me get this so that it's a reasonable. Okay, that looks pretty good. Yeah. f2. And now we're blurred out pretty good. And it's kind of like if I really want you to pay attention to a monologue, or if there's some kind of dialogue going on in the film that I just absolutely want you to be focused on and not really notice anything else other than maybe colors moving around behind me, like the bokeh maybe shimmering a little bit, or maybe birds might go behind me right now, or a boat or something like that. But at f2 on a full frame camera, you could hardly even tell what it is. You know, I could go to f1.4. I'm not sure I'll be in focus, but I would be close. Let me show you f1.4. Let's see what that looks like on this camera. Now I'm at f1.4, and we are completely blurred out. And so if I had a really emotional monologue right now or something like that, you would be completely focused on me. And that's what I love most about it. Also, you know, when I'm, you know, like if you saw some of the other shots that I had at the beginning of this video, when you shoot at f1.4 and you shoot like blades of grass or, you know, leaves or flowers or something like that, it's just really beautiful. It kind of creates like a painting almost, like it's almost surrealistic, you know, because that's not the way the world looks to anybody. So that's kind of cool too. So let me put this aperture back to something relatively normal for this distance. I'm going to put it back to f8 so you can see how now you'll be able to see much more behind me. Let me fix this a little bit. Now I'm at f8, so you see what's behind me, right? I can't really tell about my exposure right now. It might be a little overexposed behind me, but anyway, I love using a 50 millimeter lens because it's flexible like that. Now I can get the same kind of effect with a 28 millimeter, but obviously the background will look much further away from me, and it's just a whole different vibe. You know, like the feeling, the emotion is just a lot different. All right, I thought to be fair and to make this a little bit more interesting, I would insert myself using the 28 millimeter f2.8 lens. I'm shooting at f8 right now, so it's the same as the way I was shooting with the 50 millimeter. So you could see that I look much smaller. There's more of me and there's more behind me in the frame. And of course now the sun is exploding, so let me control this. but I just thought it would be a good idea for you to see I'm about the exact same distance from the camera. Now obviously, if I move closer to the camera, I can get a better kind of perspective of making myself look exactly the way I looked with the 50mm, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's more valuable to show you this is how far away I am from the camera, about the same distance as the 50mm down by the water. And how does it look to you? Does it look different? I think it looks a lot different, or most importantly, I think it feels a lot different. But for me, 28 and 50 pretty much cover everything. So somebody asked me that question, and the other thing somebody asked me was, how am I setting up working with manual focus all the time? So generally, if I'm shooting just like a lot of B-roll stuff, and none of it is, you know, within say 10 feet of me, I'm going to set up my the aperture that I choose, which is generally f8 in a situation like that, and then I'm going to take the on my lens. If you see, you know where all the numbers are in the lens, right, on a manual lens. So I'm going to take infinity and I'm going to set that to 8. If I'm set to f8, I'm going to set that to 8. And then on the other side, you can see when you go to 8, you can see how many feet or meters where everything is going to be clear beyond that point. And so if I set it at f4, then I'll put infinity to 4. If I go to f5.6, I'll put infinity to 5.6, and so on. f16, I'll look for 16 on the other side. And then you can see how much distance you have before where everything is kind of blurry, but then all of a sudden everything should be clear after that. So then you could just run around and everything's going to be in focus on your lens. Like if you're driving, or if you're just running around in the city or in the country or wherever, whatever you're shooting, you can be sure that everything's going to be in focus. I use zone focusing quite a bit to try to explain again what I was explaining with the 50mm. If I want to get everything in focus and I'm just kind of like actually this would be great for street photography, which I don't like street photography myself, but if you're just out running and gunning and shooting and you don't want to have to worry about focusing manually all the time, I would say shoot at around f8, f4 at the fastest, and take the aperture ring, right? Put it on the aperture that you just chose. So let's say you chose f4. Put infinity focus to f4 on the right side of the lens, and then just look on the other side and you'll see f4, and it'll tell you meters or feet, and everything from that point on past the lens is going to be in focus. It's going to be clear. In other words, you can run around and everything is going to be good. So you just have to worry about your composition and the subject and the storytelling, and you don't have to worry about critical focus as much. Obviously, if you want to deal with critical focus, I personally always think that manual focus is better, but I guess, every once in a while autofocus can get you something that you might not have been able to get with manual focus if it happens really fast, but I guarantee you pretty much every time that's going to be luck. Like I got a shot of some birds flying by the river. I used the technique that I just talked about. I know that everything was in focus past about 8 feet away from me, and these birds were definitely more than 8 feet, so they're in focus and they look good. And I shot at 60 frames per second, so I got a little slow motion going, and so it feels good, and that's with the 50mm. With the 28mm, they would have looked a lot further away. They would have looked smaller. It wouldn't have been as present, And I don't know if it would make that much of a difference when you're talking about birds flying around in slow motion, but what I wanted, what I saw in my head, the 50mm was much more appropriate because I wanted that longer kind of lens, and I wanted more lens compression. And I know some people say there's no such thing as lens compression, but I wanted that look where everything looked closer to the birds behind them, and so it creates a little bit more dramatic kind of a look of movement behind them when things appear to be closer. When they're further away, things don't appear to move as fast or as dramatically because you just have a perspective of everything. When you have a perspective that's a little bit closer, like things look closer and you're not quite as wide, when things move, it's a little bit more dramatic. So anyway, now you see the difference. This is 28mm. I'm going to step away and go about as far as I was from the shots that I gave at the beginning of the video for the 50mm, and you'll see the difference in how it looks. Like I'll look a lot smaller and a lot farther away. So let me get a couple of those shots now, and then we'll go back to the 50mm and finish the video. All right, let's do that. I use my focus assist tools on the camera to get everything in focus, and I'm very intentional with my aperture, the way I want the frame to look. You know, I want everything to look like a painting, you know. So in my head, I'm creating what I want to be ultra clear and what I want to be just a little bit more out of focus, you know, a little bit blurry. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I don't know if that's clear or if that's not clear, but it's pretty easy, really. You can see all these birds flying behind me right now, which is pretty cool. I want to make a quick comment about climate change. All of these benches and stuff, like this area that I'm shooting right here, where you're seeing all this water, like I've lived up here for 3 years now. I moved out of the city 3 years ago. I've been living up in Poughkeepsie. I have never seen water up there like that unless we've had a massive rainstorm. And the funny thing is, it hasn't even rained. It's just that the water table is rising in this area, which is really strange and kind of disturbing. Like, this water has no reason to be this high. The water, you know, like I have to keep my feet right now above this pole because there's water here. There never used to be water. These rocks going out to the bridge, like I used to be able to walk out to those rocks no problem. Like there was no water. So very, very interesting, kind of disturbing, and I guess we'll see what happens. But anyway, I hope I clarified a couple of things to some of the questions that people have thrown at me. And this is more of a kind of technical video, I guess, without me being ultra technical, because most of my work is just by instinct. And once I learn how the gear works, I don't really think about the numbers or the technical aspects. I just do it because I know how it works and I know how to use it with my hands. And it's just a tool. It's kind of an extension of my eyes. Like my eyes know how to focus, my ears know how to listen to focus on something. So that's pretty much how I use the camera as well. But I hope that clears it up somewhat. And I guess that's all I got to say about that. See you later.